I am Anders Hagstrom. Welcome to the Daily Caller Wednesday morning dispatch. We've got Bradley Devlin here to give you the news. Brad, let's just hop right into this. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Afghanistan. It's all anybody's been talking about this week. It's pretty much where all of the news when it comes to America is at right now. We've seen lots of really horrifying footage coming out of Afghanistan. And I mean, we saw people falling from planes as they were taking off on Monday morning, and now we're seeing more footage of people actually appearing to be stuck in the landing gear, or somehow wedged up in the landing gear of American planes as they took off. And that sort of coincides with some reports that we actually found human remains inside landing gear when they land at U.S. bases elsewhere in the Middle East or even in the U.S. Brad, can you give us the details here? What exactly is happening?
Yeah, you can see that this photo slash video, the man's legs are hanging out of the side of the C-17 military plane's wheel again as it took off from the airport in Kabul, and it hit the side of the plane. And you saw other videos of people falling to their deaths. Listen, all of this is really harrowing stuff, and you saw a lot of people kind of using these scenes to dunk on Biden as if this is Biden's fault, was one of the tweets from conservative pundit Ben Shapiro when we saw one of the first videos of a man falling off the side of the C-17 plane. And while Biden owns a lot of, the strategy was correct in withdrawing from Afghanistan. Withdrawing from Afghanistan is still good, will be good, and a majority of Americans approve of it. The tactics were poor, right? He took everyone out of Bagram Air Force Base prior to taking the embassy staff down to minimal staffing. He knew that we would need the people at Bagram to help get our civilians out. He didn't do that. There was a few things that should have been done way differently, and Biden botched the pullout from Afghanistan. But I kind of think that the guy who holds on to the wheel of a C-17 bears a little responsibility, right? Like, your chances of surviving a bout with the Taliban are probably higher than you holding on to the landing gear of a C-17 all the way from, Kabul to wherever it lands. Whether that's the United States or somewhere else more likely in the region prior to going to the United States, obviously, right? And then people were saying on Twitter, if you pointed this out, like, well, these Afghans, they don't know. It's like, no, they're not, they have a high level of illiteracy, not a high level of education in the country. I understand that there are, serious education deficiencies there, but they know planes go high and they know planes go fast. And your chances of hanging on to one of those things, probably not too high.
I think when it comes to that, you've got to assume. I mean, we all saw that footage of the crowds, really just like throngs of people crowding around the C-17 as it was trying to take off, and you've got to assume that this person wasn't really thinking that they were going to cling to the landing gear throughout the flight, but I think that they were trying to get the plane to stop so that they could get on, and then it's one thing led to another, and the plane didn't stop like the crowd wanted it to, and then well, I mean, we all saw what happened after that. But I want to touch on something you said. Obviously, disagreeing with Biden's strategy with withdrawing from Afghanistan, but disagreeing with the tactics, because that's basically the same thing that former President Donald Trump said on Sean Hannity last night. He appeared on the show. It was his first major appearance since everything that's happened in Afghanistan. It was his first major appearance in a long time. Actually, it's been a while since we heard from President Trump in this sort of setting. He said that what's going on in Afghanistan is the greatest embarrassment in the history of our country. Using his sort of typical hyperbolic language there. Brad, what exactly did he say? Do you think that he's being accurate when he says that it's the greatest embarrassment? Is this the right tone that Republicans should be taking against Biden right now?
I mean, look, this is the end of the global American empire, right? I mean, we've always been a hemispheric empire to a certain extent, and you might think No, how can that be? Or even if you're one of the people who said, well, we should give back American Samoa and Puerto Rico. I mean, our country is still, imperialist in size and diversity and regions, right? We go from the tropics to the Arctic. We go from the east to the west. If you believed in manifest destiny and that California is better in the hands of the U.S. government than it is the Mexican government, then you kind of believe in that U.S. hemispheric empire. Well, this is the end of the American global empire, and it's ugly and it's embarrassing. And so I think Trump definitely gets it right, and that this is at least the most embarrassing moment since Saigon, right? When we were leaving Vietnam. I think one of the things that he said that really stuck out to me was the fact is that they are among the highest paid soldiers in the world. He's talking about the Afghan army. They were doing it for a paycheck because once we left, they stopped fighting. This is the uncomfortable truth. Yes, Afghan fighters, Afghan military members did suffer thousands of casualties in the past. I think 5 years, they lost 60,000 people. That's because U.S. troops and NATO allies were dragging these people into combat when they necessarily didn't want to go. There's a number of documents that have come to light over the past few years that shows, hey, actually the Afghan army's officers were registering fake soldiers in order to get paid basically those soldiers' salaries and then pocket them themselves. They forced right. So if you were a husband and you died fighting for the Afghan army, well, then the U.S. government was going to provide some sort of stipend to the woman, and so they would give this stipend to the Afghan army officials to give to the women, and then the officials would go there and make the woman perform sex acts in order to get the stipend. They negotiated in backdoor ways, basically a unconditional surrender and let the Taliban march right into Kabul while giving them all sorts of weapons on the way, right? So even if we destroyed all the weapons, like Trump rightly said, we should have destroyed more of the military equipment that we left there. There was no getting around the fact that the Taliban was going to come into a lot of U.S. Army and military equipment because the Afghan army just handed it right over. And so that's what I think really stuck out to me on Trump's statement, and it's objectively true. I mean, yeah, some of these soldiers weren't paid as regularly as they should have been, but at the same time, as the Afghan papers showed, the only thing that we believe that we really cemented there over a long period of time was a giant kleptocracy, and the Afghan military was the perfect example of that. And when it came time to fight and defend for their own country, that kleptocracy kept on going, and so they started to get paid. And they started to get paid by the Taliban and the U.S. And basically just stepped aside and tried to, flee to Tajikistan after that.
Mm-hmm. Well, moving on to our last story here, we're going to be focusing on something a little bit smaller. We had one of the craziest things happen to one of our editors here at the Daily Caller, Eric Lieberman. He woke up yesterday at 6:30 in the morning to police knocking on his door, heavily armed police officers. There was like an MRAP out in his front yard, and apparently his neighbors are alleged murderers. Brad, can you give us the details here? What exactly happened?
I don't want to give this story short shrift, so everyone should go read this thing in full. It's called "I Woke Up This Morning and Somehow Became Part of a Police Raid on My Suspected Murderer Neighbors." Right, so this is like a sting operation that the police were running on this apparently this house that was housing a murderous couple from who committed a murder just recently in the neighboring Chester County of Pennsylvania. Eric's from Philly. So he woke up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. His fiance woke him up. The police comes to the door and his fiance's like, "He's police. He's really heavily armed." And Eric, I could just imagine just groggy, just being like, "There's a big armed man at my door. Like, no, this guy's not coming in." And eventually, he goes down there. The guy shows him his badge and he lets him in. And he starts getting ready for work, as ready as we get these days. I got the suit and tie, or not even a tie. I got the shirt and jacket on up top, but sweats on the bottom, Anders. That's about as ready as we get for work these days, not going into the office at the Caller. So however ready Eric was getting, it wasn't that ready. But while he was doing that, they heard flashbangs go off, and the police raided the next door neighbor's home. So you all should really go and read that. It's hilarious.
It is. It was an absolutely incredible story. Anyways, that's it for your Wednesday morning Dispatch Patriots. Brad, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody enjoy the rest of your day.